amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello and welcome, listeners. My guest today is Brigitte Muir. In 1997, Brigitte became the first Australian woman to reach the summit of Mt Everest and the first Australian, male or female, to climb the 7 summits, the highest summit on each of the continents. After her career in mountaineering and adventure, Brigitte has become a filmmaker and an inspirational speaker. She leads community building treks in the village of Lura in East Nepal, where she started a women's literacy and empowerment program. Welcome, Brigitte.
Thank you. It's lovely to be speaking with you.
It's wonderful to have you there. Brigitte is in Melbourne, and of course we're here in Brisbane in the studios of 4RPH. Now, Brigitte, you were born in Belgium, and I believe caving was your first love. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's one of those things that happened when I was at a time where, I was a very shy girl, and I didn't really know what to do with my life. And I came across a little stand at the commercial fair near my town where people were showing activities like caving, and I thought, I want to do that. So I went back home and I talked to my mum about it, and she said, no, you're not doing that, it's too dangerous.
Right, yes.
After a 3 weeks war, I won. And I went caving, and, it's just there was no stopping me after that. I just absolutely adored being in the great outdoors, although it started with the great indoors, of course, but it was really, for me, a life of adventure.
Oh, how wonderful. Now, how did you switch sort of from underground to conquering high peaks? What sort of changed your interest there?
It was just about meeting people. The people that I was caving with, and they were all boys, which was a good thing when you're 16 years old.
Yes, of course.
They were doing other activities such as rock climbing and climbing overseas. And of course, it was like, I've got to go climbing overseas and I've got to try rock climbing. So I did. So it was through people that I met because I decided that I was going to take that first step on the road to what I wanted to do, that I ended up rock climbing and then going and climbing mountains overseas as well.
Oh, how wonderful. Now, Brigitte, my husband and I were lucky enough to sail. We had our own boat and we sailed down the canals of Belgium, going from into France. There's some very high, lovely mountains there, but there's also a lot of areas that are sort of factories and whatever, and I believe that's where you came from, is it? You said you were pleased to get out of there and be into the wilderness and the wild.
Absolutely, yes. My dad was a steel worker, and the valley where we lived was just filled with factories. So the only way out of there was going up, and that was exploring slag heaps to start with.
Oh, right, right.
From there, yeah. I think that's when you feel like you know which way you're going. You'll find a way to get there. There's absolutely no question in my mind.
Exactly. So, what was the first mountain you climbed, and going on from there, the first mountain that you conquered?
Well, the first mountain I climbed was called the Gran Paradiso in Italy, so the Great Paradise, which is really not a bad name for a first mountain.
Absolutely.
And from there, yes, I was invited by a friend to go to Canada, and we tried a mountain called the Lotus Flower Tower, another beautiful name and a beautiful mountain. And we didn't get up, but it was in the total wilderness. I'd never been on a plane before, and we flew to Canada, of course, and then we had to catch a helicopter to take us to the Cirque of the Unclimbables, as they were called, and they still are. And that was 2 weeks in the wilderness, and I was so scared of bears.
Oh, they're absolutely terrifying, I would imagine.
Oh, yes. They're big, but we were lucky we didn't see any, but I still,
Yes, but you're still worrying around every corner, aren't you, that there might be one?
Yes, exactly, yeah.
And now, look, tell me, what brought you to Australia?
Well, Australia was a bit of a fluke, really. After that trip to Canada, I really had to go somewhere else. And most of the people I knew at the time, so we're in 1979 in Belgium, they were going to Africa to climb on Mount Kenya, for example. So I thought, well, I've been overseas, I've tried climbing a mountain, so I can just do what the others are doing. I'm going to go to Kenya and climb Mount Kenya. So I went and saw a friend of mine who was a travel agent near my university, and I told her I wanted to go to Kenya. And she said, oh, that's funny, the price of a ticket to Kenya is actually the same as the price of a ticket to Australia.
Oh, right.
And that was that. I thought, right, forget about Kenya.
I will come to Australia.
Yeah.
Oh, how wonderful. Now, you mentioned university. What were you studying at university?
I was studying archaeology and history of art, and I specialized in prehistoric stone implements.
Oh, right. Well, the archaeology part would fit in with a lot of your exploration and expeditions, I would imagine. Add a bit of interest.
Well, yes and no, because when I moved to Australia, I did go to Melbourne University and ask them, what can I do with my degree? And they said, nothing, because we're giving all the jobs now to First Peoples, and that's fair enough. And they said, oh, do you like shipwrecks? And I went, yeah, no, not really my cup of tea. I'm scared of water, so I could never do what you're doing. In the 80s,
yeah.
The jobs in prehistory were going to First Nations people.
Yes.
I cannot do what they're proposing me, which was to do shipwrecks.
Oh, shipwrecks.
So they offered me to work in the shipwrecks area, and I'm scared of water, so that really wasn't for me, and I could never do what you do, sailing everywhere.
It's a totally different life, and a lot of different elements, aren't there, that one needs to cope to on the water as compared to climbing mountains. But how different was climbing in Australia, sort of, to other parts of the world that you climbed at that stage?
Well, I actually live 4 hours west of Melbourne in a small place called Nadimak, and that's at the foot of Mount Everest, which is the best rock climbing area in Australia, which is why I moved there. So I was into rock climbing then, and it was just the best place to do it. And then, of course, when you're in Australia, it's a lot closer to the Himalaya compared to being in Belgium. So that was the next option that happened in my life. I started looking towards the Himalaya and bigger mountains.
Well, you met John, of course, didn't you, in Australia? And he was also a mountaineer. And I gather your first home was a tent. Is that right?
That's right, yes. Yeah, we got married in 1983, and his parents bought us our first home, which was a big family tent.
Oh. Is that in the same area that you're living in now, Brigitte?
It is, except I live in a house now.
Oh, you've graduated. That's good, because it's pretty cold down there.
It can be, yes. Yeah. But it's beautiful. It's the country of the sky.
It's a beautiful area, isn't it? But it is chilly. So you and John went to the Himalayas together then to climb?
Yeah, we had a few trips together, yes, absolutely. Yeah. We did some pretty amazing climbs, and in other places as well, like in South America, but mostly in the Himalaya, yeah.
Right. How did you cope with altitude sickness? Did you suffer from that at all to begin with? Or?
Well, it's something that happens each time you go to altitude. I mean, not getting sick, but having to get used to the altitude. And I figured out quite quickly that I was a slow acclimatizer.
Yes.
So I needed to take my time to go up, and just go up and then come back down and then go back up. And you learn to listen to your body when you are at high altitude. And if you don't, you can get into trouble big time. Absolutely, yeah.
And you set yourself, I mean, it was an enormous task you set, wasn't it, to climb the highest peaks on 7 continents, 7 summits. I mean, that was an incredible goal to set.
Well, it happened because in 1988, John was invited to join the Australian bicentennial Everest expedition, and he was going to be filming, and I wasn't invited. Well, I could have gone on it, but it involved paying a lot of money, and it wasn't a good time to do that. So I thought, well, in 84, so 4 years before that, I'd met at Everest Base Camp a guy called Dick Bass, and he was the first person to climb the highest peak on each continent.
Right.
And his book had just come out, and I thought, oh, maybe I can do that instead. I'm going to go and climb the highest peak on each continent. So there.
Gosh, I mean, it's incredible that you set yourself those goals, but that you did it as well.
Yeah,
I mean, a number of people think, yes, I'll do that, but not everybody gets out there and does it.
Yes, and not many people were doing it at the time, and also, I guess, things were not as organized as they are these days, where a lot of people climb. It's become quite fashionable to climb the seven summits, as they're called.
Yes.
But I really wanted a long-term goal, because I'd always been good at starting things and not finishing them. And it seemed like it fell in my lap, really. It was the right time and the right place. So I went and got a job grape picking, saved money to go to the first one, and it just went from there, really.
And what about Alaska and Argentina? What were they like? That must have been incredible there.
It was. Now, John and I had separated, and I fell in love with a guy in Alaska, so I ended up spending 6 months there.
All right.
And Denali was a very, very beautiful mountain, very wild. And I really, really liked the country. And but I was on a mission. So after my 6 months in Alaska, I went to Belgium and got another job. I was painting lettering on high industrial towers this time. Anything to get to the next mountain, really.
Right, right.
And that saved me the money to go to Kilimanjaro. So I did that, and then went back to Australia and looked at climbing the next one, which was going to be Aconcagua in Argentina. And once again, I got a job, saved the money, and went. And of course, I got a little bit of sponsorship here and there.
Yes.
For example, the Australian Geographic helped me a bit along the way. Yeah.
But when you decided, Brigitte, that you would like to conquer Mount Everest, which, as we all know, no other Australian woman had ever reached the summit at that stage. So how did you go about sort of raising money to try that? Was that difficult, or did you find people were right behind you?
Well, it was a different kettle of fish altogether, because it involved finding a bigger amount of money. I mean, I couldn't just get a job, save up and go, not with the kind of stuff I was doing. So I had to find sponsors, and that's when I started working with a few people who were helping me, and those people became friends, and they inspired me to keep going when the going was tough. When, sometimes it's harder to find the money to go and climb a mountain than climbing the mountain, really.
Well, look, it certainly took perseverance on your behalf, because, I mean, you had many attempts which sadly failed. But then in 1997, I mean, after tragically 11 people died, didn't they, attempting the summit in 1996, you were successful.
That's right.
Gosh, what an amazing feeling that must have been. I mean, tell us about, first of all, those unsuccessful attempts, and then ultimately being successful, and who you took with you. I believe you had Sheila the koala.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Well, I had 3 attempts first, 2 in Tibet and 1 in Nepal. And as you said, the one in Nepal in 96 was a disaster, because 11 people lost their lives, and I was on the South Col when all that happened. And the 2 previous attempts, they were from Tibet. And the first time I didn't get very far. I didn't even reach 8,000 meters, which was very disappointing. And then I went back in 95, and I was doing really well, but then my head torch stopped working high on the mountain, and the people I was with didn't notice it. So I had to spend the night at 8,500 meters, just sitting on a tiny, tiny ledge, waiting for the light, to come so I could go back down.
It would have been a frightening feeling being stuck there on your own, apart from very cold.
Well, no, I wasn't scared, because, I mean, I'd been climbing for a long time, so I had a lot of experience under my belt, but I was really angry that I'd been left behind.
Yes.
And then I realized it was my fault, because I hadn't really told the others, what was going on. So I could only blame myself, really, which is usually the case when something goes wrong. Start with blaming yourself.
I know you like to think it's someone else's fault, but yes, if it comes back ultimately to you. But you were successful in 1997, and you got to the very, very top. as I say, you had Sheila the koala with you, but you took off your oxygen mask on the way down, didn't you? Or was that at the top and developed a potentially deadly pulmonary edema? I mean, did that take some of the gloss off your achievement? But tell us about that.
Well, you're right. When I was on the top, I took my oxygen mask off because I was picking my camera and I was really excited. And there were just the three of us up there. We were the last one to climb the mountain, and so it was very special. But what I didn't realize was that it's all very well to take off your oxygen mask on top of the highest mountain on earth, but you pay the price, which is because there's hardly any oxygen up there. It meant that I developed pulmonary edema, and on the way down I had to get some help to keep going down, as in we were soloing without ropes, and then I realized that I'd better tell my people, the two Sherpas who were with me, Kipa Sherpa and Dolce Sherpa, that they needed to look after me.
Now, Bridget, tell me a little bit about base camp. I mean, that's what you ultimately were going down to. You can get stuck there, can't you, for days and for weeks even, but there's often parties there and whatever to fill in time. It sounds a lot of fun.
Yes, it certainly can be. It depends on the people who are there. And I guess I knew a lot of people who were into the business of taking people climbing because that's what I'd been doing for quite some time. And so there was a really good atmosphere, and yes, there were some really good parties.
Oh. It sounds, I must admit, it sounds fun, but you're all there with the one aim, many of you anyway, aren't you? So you've got a tremendous amount in common and a lot to share. Now, you're listening to Lots to Chat About. I'm Rosemary Peterswald, and my guest today is Brigitte Muir, the first Australian woman to conquer Mt Everest. Now, sadly, Brigitte, you lost a very good friend, Michael, and that caused you to rethink your life, and you ultimately gave up climbing high peaks, didn't you? Tell us how you felt about that decision.
Well, the mountain I was attracted to after climbing Everest was Makalu, which is the fifth highest mountain in the world, and I wanted to climb it in better style because on Everest you get a lot of help, you get oxygen, you get a lot of Sherpa help. And I wanted to go back to traditional mountaineering, which is without Sherpas and without oxygen. And all that went really well until I was ready to go for the summit, and a very dear friend of mine, Michael Jurgensen from Denmark, was killed coming down from the summit. And I was at base camp at the time, and that was it. I couldn't even get back on the mountain and get my gear, even though I was ready to go for the summit myself. It was way too sad. And in fact, next April, I'm going to Nepal with a bunch of friends and family from Michael from Denmark to have a bit of a celebration at a monument that was built in front of Everest for him.
Oh, that's lovely. I mean, you do work, don't you, now, with local women in Nepal? I mean, you're teaching them how to read and write, a number of them that can't, and generally living and having, well, a lot of fun with them. You share learning with them. So can you tell us about that?
Well, I noticed that a friend of mine who was working with me on treks, this is after I stopped climbing big mountains, his wife couldn't read and write. And so when he went away on treks, there was no way for them to communicate. He would send her letters, and she had to run around and try to find someone to read the letter for her. And I decided to raise money for the women of the village, all of them, because apparently it works better if all of them work together. They just don't get scared about learning that way. So I raised money for them to learn to read and write, and a local person was put in charge of that. So there was another way to actually create a job over there too for someone local. And yeah, they learned to read and write. So that was very satisfying. And I've been involved with that village ever since, which started, I guess, in 2007 going there, which led to me working on another long-term project.
Right.
Which was making a film on Sherpas at home, Sherpas below the mountain.
Oh,
So,
right.
yes, so that's what I'm still working on.
Oh,
20 years later, almost.
I think that would be a wonderful. I mean, we all know about Edmund Hillary and Tenzing as his Sherpa, wasn't it? So they are a wonderful lot of people, really.
Yes, yes, and you always see people working on the mountain, but you don't see them at home.
No.
And because I spent so much time in that village, Lura, below the mountains, well, it's still in the mountains, really, below Everest, I should say, I became part of the family. You know, I've got 6 nieces and nephews over there.
Oh, right.
And, yes, and I've known them since they were babies or young children, and now most of them are married and they have kids themselves. And so I film all that, and I'm doing the rough cuts at the moment, and it's very exciting to be able to tell their story.
I can't wait to see it. I'm sure it'll probably be a Netflix bestseller. But walking, I mean, you do a lot of walking now, isn't it? You say it's sort of your passion. And you're also involved with the Australian Himalayan Foundation. And I think, if I'm right, you're conducting an Everest trail to, is it Pikey or Peaky Peak? And beyond next year, raising funds to support AHF programs like Action for Nepal's Health Project. So you're still pretty busy there, Brigitte.
Well, I love walking, and I love sharing my knowledge of mountains and how to walk, I guess, at high altitude without straining and without hurting yourself, because I've been doing it for a long time, so it's nice to be able to pass it on. And also I love sharing the culture of the people who have made the place my second home, and it works very well to put those things together. And I think that people who come on treks with me really enjoy seeing something different, not just, trekking to Everest Base Camp and staying in hotels with a million other Westerners. Instead, they just spend time with Nepali people, which makes it a lot more authentic.
And what a wonderful person to be able to do it with. We got cut off a little bit before, Brigitte, but I just wanted to go back to when you were standing on the peak of Mount Everest as the very first Australian woman to reach that peak. Just tell me, how did you feel that moment?
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that I never stood on it. I actually sat on the top.
All right. Not surprised. Yeah.
It was just the right height to sit on, so there was no way. I felt really stupid, thinking, oh, should I stand on that? Nah, I'm going to sit on it.
Right.
And it was relief, really, to have finally made it to the summit. And I couldn't really think about anything but the fact that I had to come down because, as I'm sure you know, most accidents in climbing high mountains happen on the way down because people lose their focus, and you definitely can't lose your focus when you're going down and you're very tired. So I was focused on that, but I also was very keen to talk about the importance, because I was filming all this, the importance of looking after Australia because it's such a unique place. So I talked about this in my camera, and I thanked all the people who helped me get there, including my beautiful friend Anne Tyndall, who was the producer for my documentary and unfortunately passed away a year ago. So, I've thanked all the people who helped me get there, including, of course, the 2 Sherpas who were there with me, because people always forget that someday. They say, oh, my Sherpa did this and my Sherpa did that.
Yes.
People like you and me, they have names,
Exactly. That's exactly right. How do you feel now, Brigitte? Because there's a lot of people climbing Mount Everest, isn't there? And I gather sometimes it's a little bit like peak hour, isn't it?
It certainly looks that way. Well, I feel blessed that I climbed it when I did.
Yes.
Because it certainly wasn't crowded as it is these days. And I feel a bit sorry for people. I mean, I'm sure they're having a lot of fun, but it doesn't really look like climbing anymore. It's more like, you've got a ticket and next.
Exactly.
Next.
Being caught in a very cold traffic jam, I would think.
Yeah.
Brigitte, you wrote a book, a wonderful book called The Wind in My Hair. Is it on audio by any chance for our listeners who, many of them are sight impaired?
No, it's not on audio, no, but it's an ebook available on Kindle. So I republished it because it had 2 print runs.
Yes.
and then it was out of print, and I thought, it just makes more sense to have it as a self-published ebook. Yeah.
Oh well, that's terrific. So it's on Kindle and whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Now, tell me a little bit about Beyond the Smile.
Well, Beyond the Smile is the title of the documentary that I'm working on.
Right.
And the reason it's called Beyond the Smile is because all the Sherpas, as in Sherpas with a small s, which means workers on treks or expeditions,
yes,
they're always smiling a lot and laughing and they work hard on trips. And I was wondering, I wonder if they smile as much and laugh as much when they're at home. And I discovered that they do. Oh, that one anyway did. Like Patamang, who had the most amazing smile, and that's how I ended up going to his place and figuring out what was beyond his smile. Yes.
Oh, right. Oh, well, that's terrific. Yes, I hadn't actually connected the Beyond the Smile with the actual film that you're making, but what a wonderful name for it. And I think, as I said, I think it'll be, I would imagine it would be very popular to our listeners. Now, how can our listeners, if they want to find out, I know you're on Facebook, and is there any other ways that they can contact you if they'd like to find out a little bit more about what you're up to, Brigitte?
Yes. Have you heard of Patreon?
I beg your pardon?
Patreon. Patreon.com/Brigitte Muir.
All
That's
right.
where I put all my stories and videos and everything else.
That's wonderful. Could you just spell that out for us?
Patreon, Patreon.
Yes.
.com/Brigitte Muir.
Oh, terrific. But you are very much there on Facebook as well. If people want to go into Facebook
and LinkedIn and Instagram
and Instagram as well. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, obviously, when you did it originally, when you went up to the peak of Mt Everest and conquered it, we didn't, of course, have internet and all of that.
Oh, gosh, I was so lucky, wasn't I?
I know.
I've been a slave to social media otherwise.
And you probably would have got a lot of advice along the way and whatever. But look, Brigitte, it's been absolutely wonderful, and I can't tell you how in awe I am of, and I'm sure our listeners are as well, in your incredible achievements and what you are continuing to do with the women of Nepal and with your wonderful movie that's going to come out, Beyond the Smile, which is about the Sherpas in Nepal.
Thank you.
So thank you very, very much for being our guest today. And thank you, Paul, for being our producer.
Thank you.
It's been fascinating, hasn't it, Paul?
Certainly has. I don't know if I want to climb Mount Everest. I know of a vision-impaired person who's done it.
All right.
However, it's not probably for me. But it'd be, a good climb.
Absolutely. So thank you, Paul. And again, thank you, Brigitte. And this program has been recorded in the studios of 4RPH Reading Radio in Brisbane for syndication around Australia.
Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.